First contact shock. Admiral Zorn Tai stood on the observation deck of the Imperium's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing the small blue-green planet. His scaled skin reflected the soft blue glow of the ship's ambient lighting as he contemplated the latest discovery of the Gernazi Imperium's expansion fleet. "Primitive, you say?" he rumbled, addressing the science officer who stood rigidly at attention. "Yes, Admiral," replied Science Officer Vex Moore, her voice tinged with the slight hissing accent common to all Gernazi. "The species calls themselves humans. They've achieved rudimentary spaceflight, but are confined to their own system. Basic fusion technology, chemical propellants, and minimal understanding of gravitic principles." The Admiral's secondary arms twitched in amusement. Another candidate for protected status, then. How tiresome. In the 3,000 cycles since the Gernazi Imperium had begun its expansion across the galaxy, they had encountered dozens of species like this one. Some were useful as client races, providing resources or specialized labor. Others were simply cataloged, contained, and controlled, for their own protection, of course. Their home system contains significant rare mineral deposits, continued Vex Moore, particularly in their asteroid belt and on their 4th planet. Initial assessment suggests they would make valuable resource extractors under proper supervision. Very well, Zorn Tai decided. Send the standard first contact package. Invite their leaders to the Galactic Assembly as observers. We'll begin the integration process immediately. 3 cycles later, Admiral Zorn Tai found himself standing in the vast reception hall of the Galactic Assembly headquarters on Jur Prime. The immense circular chamber was designed to impress. Soaring crystalline arches supported a dome that displayed a perfect real-time image of the galaxy, with Jur Prime gleaming at its center. Representatives from 200 subject species filled the tiered seating around the central platform. "The human delegate has arrived, Admiral," reported his aide. Zorn Tai allowed himself a small sigh. These first meetings with primitive species always followed the same pattern. The aliens would arrive in whatever crude vessel they possessed, obviously overwhelmed by Gernazi technology. They would stammer their way through diplomatic protocols, awed by the grandeur of the assembly. And then, inevitably, they would gratefully accept protected status, relieved to have the guidance of a superior civilization. "Show them in," he ordered. The massive doors at the far end of the chamber slid open, and Zorn Tai's primary heart skipped a beat. The human delegation wasn't being escorted in the usual procession of Imperium guards. Instead, a single figure walked calmly into the chamber, dressed in a simple dark uniform with minimal decoration. But what caught the Admiral's attention wasn't the human, it was what followed behind them. Floating silently several centimeters above the polished floor was what appeared to be a chair, or perhaps a small command console. It emitted no detectable energy signatures and seemed to defy the gravitational field without any visible propulsion system. The human stopped at the center of the chamber and bowed slightly. "Greetings, Admiral Zorn Tai. I am Ambassador Chen Wei of Earth. Thank you for your invitation." Zorn Tai recovered his composure quickly. "Welcome to the Galactic Assembly, Ambassador Chen Wei. We are pleased to." "If I may, Admiral," the human interrupted smoothly. "Before we proceed with formalities, I believe there may be some misunderstanding regarding Earth's status in these proceedings." A murmur ran through the assembly. No species had ever interrupted a Gernazi admiral during first contact protocols. Zorn Tai's secondary arms twitched in irritation. "What misunderstanding might that be, Ambassador?" he asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Ambassador Chen smiled. "Your invitation referred to Earth as a candidate for protected status within the Imperium. However, Earth and the associated human colonies throughout our local cluster are sovereign territories. We are here to establish diplomatic relations as equals, not as subjects." Stunned silence filled the chamber. "Colonies?" Zorn Tai finally managed. "Your species has not achieved faster than light travel. Our surveys clearly showed. With respect, Admiral, Ambassador Chen said, "Your surveys were incomplete. Humanity has maintained a policy of technological discretion for several centuries. The Earth you observed was precisely what we wished you to see." Intelligence Officer Krelzik stepped forward, her data tablet displaying frantic updates. "Admiral, we're receiving reports of unknown structures appearing throughout the sector adjacent to human space. They appear to be outposts of some kind. They weren't there during our initial surveys. They were cloaked," Ambassador Chen explained casually. "Once we confirmed your intentions were diplomatic, we felt comfortable revealing a small portion of our actual presence in the galaxy." Zorntai felt a cold sensation spreading through his four hearts. This was unprecedented. No species had ever concealed their true capabilities from Imperium surveys. The implications were staggering and disturbing. "I'm curious, Ambassador," he said carefully. "How did your species achieve faster-than-light travel without our detection?" Chen smiled again. "Admiral, humanity took a different path than most spacefaring species. While others focused on manipulating existing physical laws, we found it more efficient to work with underlying quantum principles. Our drive systems don't leave traditional signatures because they don't operate on conventional physical models." As if to demonstrate, the floating platform behind the ambassador silently rose higher, rotated on multiple axes simultaneously, then settled back into position, all without a single energy emission that Imperium sensors could detect. In the adjoining analysis chamber, Science Officer Vexmore frantically examined readings from the human's floating platform. "This is impossible," she muttered. "They're manipulating gravitational fields at the quantum level without energy expenditure. Our entire understanding of physics doesn't allow for this." Back in the assembly chamber, Zorntai maintained his diplomatic composure despite his growing alarm. "Ambassador Chen, perhaps we should continue this discussion more privately. I believe there is much we have to learn about each other." "Of course, Admiral," Chen replied pleasantly. "But first, I am authorized to extend an invitation. The Earth Diplomatic Corps would like to host a delegation from the Imperium aboard our vessel, the Subtle Inquiry. It's currently in orbit around your world." Intelligence Officer Krelzik looked up from her tablet, her scales paling noticeably. "Admiral, no human vessel was detected entering our system. Our orbital defense grid reports that a ship simply appeared in high orbit 20 minutes ago. No approach vector, no FTL signature." Ambassador Chen's smile never wavered. "As I mentioned, Admiral, different principles entirely." 2 hours later, Zorntai stood with a small delegation of Imperium officials in the docking bay of the Eternal Dominion, waiting as the human diplomatic shuttle approached. The shuttle itself was another surprise, a sleek, almost organic design with no visible propulsion systems, moving with impossible precision through space. As the shuttle settled into the docking bay, Vexmore whispered to the Admiral, "Preliminary analysis suggests their vessel isn't even constructed from conventional materials. It's some kind of programmable matter matrix." The shuttle door opened, and Ambassador Chen emerged with 2 colleagues. "Admiral, may I present Captain Kimberly Rhodes and Science Attaché Dr. Marcus Okafor. They will accompany us to the Subtle Inquiry." The journey to the human vessel took less than 30 minutes, but for Zorntai, it was the longest trip of his life. Every moment brought new revelations about human technology that challenged everything he thought he knew about the galaxy's hierarchy of power. When they finally approached the Subtle Inquiry, Zorntai's mandibles clicked involuntarily in shock. The human diplomatic vessel wasn't the primitive craft he had expected. Instead, it was a massive structure, at least 3 kilometers in length, with a design unlike anything in the Imperium's records. It seemed to shimmer slightly, as though not entirely present in normal space. "Welcome aboard the Subtle Inquiry," said Ambassador Chen as they docked. "This is one of our older diplomatic vessels, but it should provide adequate accommodations for our discussions." As the Imperium delegation moved through the ship's corridors, Zorntai noticed the absence of crew. "Your vessel seems understaffed, Ambassador." "Oh, the inquiry largely manages itself," Chen replied casually. "Most of our ships maintain minimal human presence. We find it more efficient." The delegation was led to a spacious conference room where a holographic display showed a map of the galaxy, far more detailed than anything the Imperium possessed. Zorntai couldn't help but notice that human territory was marked in a subtle blue shade, extending far beyond what should have been possible. "Admiral," began Ambassador Chen, taking a seat at the conference table, "I believe it's time we discuss the actual terms of human integration into the galactic community. Not as a protected species, but as equals with significant contributions to offer." Zorntai looked at the human delegation, then at the incredible technology surrounding him, and made the most difficult decision of his career. "I believe," he said slowly, "that the Gernazi Imperium needs to reconsider its initial assessment of humanity." Ambassador Chen nodded. "That would be wise, Admiral. Very wise indeed." In the following days, the Galactic Assembly was thrown into unprecedented chaos as reports flooded in from across the sector. Human outposts that had apparently existed for decades suddenly became visible to Imperium sensors. Trade routes that had never been charted appeared on navigation systems, and most disturbingly, evidence emerged that humans had been quietly observing the Imperium for centuries, gathering intelligence while remaining completely undetected. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight, and the Gernazi Imperium, for the first time in its 3,000-cycle history, found itself facing a species it could neither intimidate nor control. And this was just the beginning. The demonstration. High Commander Graz Tull stood on the command deck of the Inexorable Might, flagship of the Imperium's 7th Fleet. Around him, 200 warships formed a perfect attack formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of Earth's sun. It had been 6 months since first contact with the humans, and the Imperium High Council had grown increasingly concerned about human intentions. "Status report," Graz Tull demanded, his 4 arms clasped behind his back in the traditional pose of Gernazi command. "All ships in position," High Commander reported Fleet Captain Drazven. "We are maintaining standard observation protocols as ordered. No aggressive posture has been detected from the humans." Graz Tull nodded. The official mission was labeled as a diplomatic visit and scientific observation exercise, but both he and his officers knew the truth. This was a show of force, carefully calculated to remind the humans of the Imperium's military might. The 7th Fleet represented nearly 20% of the Imperium's total naval strength, more than enough to subjugate any potential threat. "Any response from the humans?" he asked. "Nothing yet, High Commander. Their orbital stations have acknowledged our presence but offered no comment. No defensive systems have been activated that we can detect." Graz Tull felt a mixture of satisfaction and unease. The humans' lack of reaction could indicate either fear or confidence, and after the revelations of the past months, he wasn't sure which would be more troubling. "Open a channel to their planetary defense command," he ordered. "Inform them that the Imperium's 7th Fleet has arrived for scheduled exercises and diplomatic exchange, as discussed with the Galactic Assembly." Communications Officer Vel Tix worked at her console. "Channel open, High Commander." Graz Tull straightened to his full height. "This is High Commander Graz Tull of the Gernazi Imperium 7th Fleet. We have entered your system for scheduled exercises, as agreed by your Ambassador Chen. We come in peace, but stand ready to demonstrate the full technological capabilities of the Imperium." For several moments, there was no response. Then a calm human voice replied, "Gernazi 7th Fleet, this is Earth Defense Command. We acknowledge your arrival and diplomatic intentions. Please maintain your current position while we dispatch a representative." The communication ended abruptly. "Arrogant," muttered Drazvan. "They don't even bother with proper protocol." "Patience, Captain," said Graz Tull, though he shared the sentiment. "We're here to observe and evaluate. Let's see how they respond to a proper show of Imperium power." An hour passed. The massive Imperium fleet maintained position, their weapon systems running on low power, visible enough to register on human sensors, but not threatening enough to justify preemptive action. High Commander, called Sensor Officer Makris suddenly, we're detecting the single ship approaching from Earth orbit. Show me, ordered Graz-Tool. The main view screen shifted to display a vessel unlike any the Imperium had encountered. It was relatively small, perhaps 200 meters in length, with a dark, angular design that somehow seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. No visible weapons systems, no external engines, nothing that would identify it as a warship by Imperium standards. That's their response. Drazven laughed incredulously. One small ship against 200 warships. Graz-Toll didn't share his captain's amusement. Something about the approaching vessel made his scales tighten against his body, an instinctive reaction to danger that no Zhernazi commander could ignore. Full sensor sweep, he ordered. I want to know everything about that ship. Makris worked frantically at his console. High Commander, our sensors. They can't penetrate the hull. It's as if the scanning beams are being absorbed completely. Impossible, snapped Drazven. Increase power to the scanning arrays. Even at maximum power, we're getting nothing, replied Makris. Wait, the ship is transmitting. A human figure appeared on the view screen, a female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair pulled back tightly. She wore a simple gray uniform with minimal insignia. Zhernazi 7th Fleet. I am Captain Adora Okafor of the Earth Defense Force vessel Quiet Thunder. I understand you're here for a demonstration of capabilities. Graz-Toll stepped forward. That is correct, Captain Okafor. The Imperium wishes to share our advanced military technology as part of our ongoing diplomatic exchange. Captain Okafor smiled slightly. I see. Well, it seems we have similar intentions. The Earth Defense Council has authorized me to provide a small demonstration of our own capabilities, if you're interested. The casual tone, the single ship against an entire fleet. It was either madness or something far more concerning. Graz-Toll's military instincts screamed danger, but diplomacy demanded restraint. We would be most interested, Captain, he replied carefully. Excellent. For this demonstration, I'll need your fleet to designate 3 unmanned drones. Can you position them at coordinates I'll provide? Graz-Toll hesitated, then nodded to Drazven. Deploy 3 combat drones, 3 small, automated vessels detached from the fleet and moved to the specified coordinates, forming a triangle several thousand kilometers apart. Perfect, said Captain Okafor. Now, please observe. What happened next would be debated in Imperium military academies for decades to come. The human ship, the Quiet Thunder, simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't, with no energy signature, no distortion field, nothing to indicate movement or cloaking technology. Where did they go? Demanded Graz-Toll, his voice rising in alarm. Before anyone could respond, one of the combat drones exploded silently in space. Drone 1 has been destroyed, reported Makris, his voice shaking. No projectile detected, no energy weapon signature. It just came apart. 3 seconds later, the second drone exploded. Drone 2 destroyed. Still no sign-off. The third drone didn't explode. Instead, it simply stopped existing, molecular cohesion apparently failing instantaneously. Drone 3 has been disassembled, High Commander. Its component atoms have been dispersed in a perfect sphere. A collective silence fell over the command deck as the implication sank in. Whatever had happened to those drones had occurred without any detectable weapon or energy signature. The humans possessed technology that operated beyond the Imperium's ability to even perceive, let alone counter. Suddenly, the Quiet Thunder reappeared, not where it had been before, but directly in front of the Imperium flagship, less than a kilometer away. At that distance, it should have triggered every proximity alarm in the fleet. None had activated. Captain Okafor's face returned to the view screen. First demonstration complete, High Commander. The next part requires a volunteer ship from your fleet. A crewed vessel this time, I'm afraid. Graz-Tul felt his four hearts pounding against his chest plates. This was no longer a diplomatic exchange. It was a barely veiled threat. Captain Okafor, destroying Imperium property, even unmanned drones, could be considered an act of aggression, he said, fighting to keep his voice steady. My apologies if it seemed that way, replied Okafor, sounding genuinely contrite. The drones are intact, merely relocated. As for the demonstration, it's entirely defensive in nature. I assure you no harm will come to your volunteer vessel or its crew. Graz-Tul glanced at his senior officers, seeing his own concern mirrored in their expressions. Finally, he made a decision. The cruiser Relentless will participate in your demonstration. The Relentless, a mid-sized warship with a crew of 300, moved forward from the fleet formation. Thank you, said Captain Okafor. Now please have the Relentless target my vessel with all weapon systems and attempt to lock on. Drazven looked at Graz-Tul in confusion. They want us to target them. Do it, ordered Graz-Tul. Weapons on standby, but full targeting protocols. The Relentless turned its impressive array of energy cannons, graviton missiles, and particle beams toward the small human vessel. For several moments, nothing happened. Then the captain of the Relentless reported in, his voice tinged with disbelief. High Commander, we cannot establish a targeting lock. The ship it's as if it exists between moments in time. Our targeting systems register it as being simultaneously in multiple locations a few microseconds apart. Captain Okafor nodded on the screen. Exactly right. Final demonstration. High Commander, please instruct the Relentless to fire all weapons at my vessel. Graz-Tul hesitated. Captain Okafor, firing upon a diplomatic vessel is exactly what we're authorizing you to do, she interrupted. This is part of the demonstration. High Commander, please proceed. After a moment's further hesitation, Graz-Tul gave the order. All weapons, fire at will. The Relentless unleashed its full arsenal upon the quiet thunder. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and graviton warheads streaked across space and passed directly through the human vessel as if it weren't there. Not a single impact was registered. The weapons continued into empty space beyond, harmlessly dissipating. What you've just witnessed, explained Captain Okafor calmly, is phase shift technology. The quiet thunder temporarily existed slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, allowing your weapons to pass through harmlessly. This is just one of several defensive systems standard on all Earth Defense Force vessels. The implications were staggering. A fleet of ships with this technology would be virtually invulnerable to conventional attacks. The entire strategic doctrine of the Imperium was built around overwhelming firepower that had just been proven completely ineffective. I believe this concludes today's demonstration, said Captain Okafor. The Earth Defense Council extends its regards and hopes this exchange has been informative. We look forward to continued peaceful relations with the Zhernazi Imperium. With that, the quiet thunder simply disappeared again, this time presumably returning to Earth. In the stunned silence that followed, Fleet Captain Drazven approached Graz-Tul. High Commander, what are your orders? Graz-Tul stared at the empty space where the human ship had been. In his 400-cycle military career, he had never encountered anything like what he had just witnessed. The humans weren't just technologically advanced. They operated on principles that the Imperium couldn't even detect, let alone understand. Send a priority communication to the High Council, he said finally. Inform them that the planned demonstration has been preempted. Request immediate diplomatic consultation. Drazven lowered his voice, and the rest of the mission parameters. The contingency plans for establishing a military presence in this system. Graz-Tul turned to face his captain, all four eyes focused intently. Captain, those plans assumed we were dealing with a species we could intimidate or, if necessary, subdue through superior force. That assumption has been proven catastrophically wrong. If we provoke the humans, I believe this entire fleet could be destroyed before we could fire a single shot in our defense." He looked back at the view screen, now showing only the silent stars and the beautiful blue planet beyond. "We are not the superior power here," he said quietly, "and the sooner the Imperium accepts that reality, the better our chances of survival." 3 days later, as the Seventh Fleet began its withdrawal from the Sol system, rumors were already spreading throughout the Imperium. Stories of human ships that could vanish and reappear at will, of weapons that didn't register on sensors, of technology that defied the known laws of physics. For the first time, in 3,000 cycles, the Zhernazi Imperium faced a species it could neither understand nor control. The galaxy was changing, and the consequences would be felt across civilized space for generations to come. The humans had arrived on the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same again.